with Stephen's way of writing. And so he says, well, what are the differences? Name, of course, two different names: age, race, and creed. Now, see that he includes race, as if his race were different from Stephen's race. And we know this is not true because, I mean, the race is the same, but well. What anagrams had he made on his name in youth? Leopold Bloom, Elpod Bloom, Moldope Lub, Bolopedum, Old Olebo MP. So this is the things that he uh, played with when he was young. What acrostic upon the abbreviation of his first name had he, kinetic poet, sent to Miss Marion Molly Tweedy, on the 14th of February 1888? Poets oft have sung in rhyme of music sweet their praise divine. Let them hymn at times nine, dearer far than song or wine. You are mine, the world is mine. Very nice poem that he wrote to Molly. And this is the date when they started their relationship, 14th of February 1888. Hmm? What had prevented him from completing a topical song on the events of the past or fictures for the actual years, etc., etc.? Firstly, and now, well, why is he worried about creating a song? Because he thought that he could write a song too, like the others that are mentioned here in the question. Firstly, oscillation between events of imperial and of local interest. The anticipated Diamond Jubilee of Queen Victoria. No, no. Uh, and the posticipated opening of the new municipal fish market. Secondly, apprehension of opposition from extreme circles on the questions of respective visits of their Royal Highnesses, the Duke and Duchess of York, real, and of His Majesty King Brian Boru, imaginary. So he's thinking of why he did not continue his career as a writer. What relation existed between their ages? 16 between Stephen and Bloom, no? 16 years before 1888, when Bloom was of Stephen's present age, Stephen was 6. And now he started making a lot of uh, questions about the years that divide Stephen's and Bloom's existence. Yes, he's 20 something. Let me see. Claro, porque Bloom is 34, you remember? 34. Claro, exacto. So now he's comparing his age and the others and Stevens. What events might nullify this calculation? He, no, it's very difficult to follow because he makes a whole question of numbers. Six, sí, es como un problema. Y después dice hasta cuándo vivirían, ¿eh? Si vivirían hasta el año 81.396. Un problema numérico. Y después dice, what events might nullify these calculations? The cessation of existence of both or either, the inauguration of a new year or calendar, the annihilation of the world, and consequent extermination of the human species, inevitable but unpredictable. How many previous encounters proved their pre existence acquaintance? Two. And now he mentions the two opportunities when he has met Stephen. The first one is when in the lilac garden of Matthew Dillon's house, Medina Villa, in the company of Stephen's mother, Stephen being then of the age of 5 and reluctant to give his hand in salutation. O sea, la primera vez cuando tenía 5. The second, in the coffee room of Breslin's Hotel on a rainy Sunday, in the January of 1892 in the company of Stephen's father and Stephen's granduncle, Stephen being then 5 years old, older. So he was 10. Sorry, excuse me for a second. Sorry, I had to answer something. So, uh, did Bloom accept the invitation to dinner given them by the son and afterwards seconded by the father? Very grateful appreciation, with sincere appreciative gratitude, in appreciatively grateful sincerity of regret, he declined. No, no, impossible. Did their conversation on the subject of these reminiscences reveal a third connecting link between them? Ah, todas las veces que se encontraron, ¿no? Y hubo una tercera. Mrs. Riordan Dante, a widow of independent means, had resided in the house of Stephen's parents from the 1st of September 1888 to the 29th of December 1891, and had also resided during the years 1892, 93, 94 in the City Arms Hotel. Now, it's incredible how he remembers the years, the times, the places, no? And Bloom had resided in the same hotel. So, had he performed any special corporal work of mercy for her? I don't know if you remember, especially Alicia, Mrs. Riordan. This was a woman who lived in the same hotel where he lived with Molly, and he went to visit her on different opportunities. The woman was old, and he went to visit her. He did some errands for her. Gabriela, I don't know if you remember that because you were not with us when we read this. Well, they lived at the hotel for a time. There was at the beginning there was an old woman who lived in the hotel. The woman was very old, and well, and Bloom visited her and helped her with some errands. And when because this is what Molly thought, the idea was that when the woman died, she would bequeath her money to Bloom. But then the woman died, and there was no money for Bloom. Bueno, and this is this woman that is mentioned here. That's why it says, had he performed any special corporal work of mercy for her, he had sometimes propelled her on warm summer evenings, an infirm widow of independent, if limited means, in her convalescent bath chair, with slow revolutions of its wheel, as far as the corner of North Circular Road opposite Mr. Gavin Low's place, etc., where she had remained for a certain time, scanning through his one-lensed binocular field glasses unrecognizable citizens on tramcars, roadster bicycles, etc., etc. Uh, so he has taken her with the wheelchair to a corner, yes, for the woman to have some entertainment. Why could he then support that his vigil with the greater equanimity? Because in middle youth he had often sat observing through a rondel of bossed glass of a multicolored paint the spectacle offered with continual changes of the thoroughfare without, pedestrians, quadrupeds, velocipedes, etc., etc. What distinct different memories had each of her now 8 years deceased? No, this woman had died 8 years ago. The older, her basic cards and counters, her Skye Terrier, her supposititious wealth, porque Bloom thought that she had money and that money was going to be given to him, but it was supposititious, dice, evidentemente no tenía esa plata la mujer. Her lapses of responsiveness and incipient catarrhal deafness, the younger is Bloom, her lamp of colza oil before the statue of the Immaculate Conception, her green and maroon brushes for Charles Stewart Parnell and for Michael David, her tissue papers. Were there no means still remaining to him to achieve the rejuvenation which this reminiscence divulged to a younger companion rendered the more desirable? The indoor exercises, formerly intermittently practiced, subsequently abandoned, prescribed in Eugen Sandoz physical strength and how to obtain it. This is the famous book we already mentioned. This Eugene Sandoz, he wrote a book, you remember, to train people to have better muscles. You remember this man with que tenía todos los músculos marcados y bueno, eso es lo que él se acuerda de esa época, ¿no? De la época que ayudaba a la viejita. Had any special agility been his earlier youth? The agility. Though ring weight lifting had been beyond his strength and the full circle gyration beyond his carriage, yet as a high school scholar, he had excelled in his stable and protracted execution of the half lever movement on the parallel bars in consequence of his abnormally developed abdominal muscles. Uh, so he wasn't a good, let's say, sportsman, not at all. But he could do this. He could work on the parallel bars, ¿sí? Trabajaba las barras paralelas. Did either openly allude to their racial difference, again, this question of being a Jew? Neither. No. Claro, there is no difference because you are a Jew. What reduced to their simplest reciprocal form were Bloom's thoughts about Stephen's thoughts about Bloom and about Stephen's thoughts about Bloom's thoughts about Stephen. No, 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 claro, ¿qué piensa uno del otro y el otro del otro? Bueno, he thought that he was a Jew. He thought that he was a Jew, whereas he knew that he knew that he knew that he was not. Again, you remember this question. He was a Jew, he wasn't a Jew. His mother wasn't a Jew. So, yes, and he was baptized, and all the story we know. What? The enclosures of reticence removed were their respective parentages. Bloom, only born male transubstantial heir of Radolf Virag, subsequently Radolf Bloom, of Szombathely, Vienna, Budapest, Milan, London, and Dublin, and of Ellen Higgins, second daughter of Julius Higgins, born Caroli, and Fanny Higgins, born Hegarty. Stephen, eldest surviving male, consubstantial heir of Simon Dedalus of Cork and Dublin, and of Mary, daughter of Richard and Christina Golding, born Greer. The difference between them is that he is the only born male transubstantial heir, and Stephen is the eldest surviving male consubstantial heir. Well, I don't know if you remember the transubstantiation of the souls. See, this question of the soul going from one dead person to another one. This is the case of Bloom, yes, who has been born transubstantial heir. El alma se transportó de el abuelo Rudolf Virag to him. And Stephen is the eldest surviving male consubstantial heir. ¿Por qué consubstantial? Because he did not inherit his father's soul. Because his father is alive. Simon Dedalus is still alive. Yes? He is the eldest surviving male, el único hijo varón vivo de Simon Dedalus. Had Bloom and Stephen been baptized, and where and by whom, cleric or layman? Bloom 3 times. Esto es muy divertido. He was baptized 3 times. By the Reverend Mr. Gilmer Johnston, M.A., alone in the Protestant Church of St. Nicholas, Esesuna. By James O'Connor, Philip Gilligan, and James Fitzpatrick together under a pump in the village of Swords. And by the Reverend Charles Malone, C.C., in the Church of the Three Patrons, Rathgar. He was baptized in three faiths. Y bueno, we don't know. Stephen only once by Reverend Charles Malone. But if you pay attention, the same priest baptized Bloom and Stephen. Charles Malone is the third baptism of Bloom, and the first one and the only one of Stephen, and this, at the same church, exactly. Did they find their educational careers similar? Similar. Well, again, substituting Stephen for Bloom's tomb would have passed successively through a dame school and the high school. Substituting Bloom for Stephen Bliffem would have passed successively through the preparatory, junior, middle, and senior grades of the intermediate and through the matriculation, first arts, second arts, and arts degree courses of the Royal University. So the difference between them, as we all know, is that Bloom only did let's say, the normal school, primary and secondary. Stephen continued, yes. Why did Bloom refrain from stating that he had frequented the University of Life? Again, a very interesting point, because Bloom has been to the University of Life, different from the University of Arts, because of his fluctuating incertitude as to whether this observation had or had not been already made by him or to Stephen or by Stephen to him. So this is an observation that he has been to the University of Life. What two temperaments did they individually represent? The scientific, Bloom; the artistic, Stephen. So the difference between them is stated as one is the scientist, the other one is the artist. What proofs did Bloom adduce to prove that his tendency was towards applied rather than towards pure science? Again, the difference between the sciences, no? Applied science or pure science. And we know that Stephen is Bloom is very much interested in applied science because he's always thinking of inventions and no certain possible inventions of which he had cogitated when reclining in a state of supine repletion to aid digestion. This is also very funny. Cogitated. To cogitate is to think, no? From the Latin, I cogit, I exist. Sí, sí, si pienso, luego existo. Claro. De ahí toma el cogite. Entonces, cuando él había cogitated, pensado, when reclining in a state of supine repletion to aid digestion. O sea, cuando había comido un montón y estaba haciendo la digestión, entonces ahí pensaba, pensaba, inventaba cosas. Ah, stimulated by his appreciation of the importance of inventions, now common but once revolutionary. For example, the aeronautic parachute, the reflecting telescope, the spiral corkscrew. Esto es muy divertido. Comparar el telescopio con el sacacorchos que hace espiral. The safety pin, el ganchito para agarrarte la ropa, ¿sí? The mineral water siphon, the canal lock with winch and sluice, the suction pump. So all these things were things that he invented when he was doing the digestion. Were these inventions principally intended for an improved scheme of kindergarten? Yes. Rendering obsolete pop guns, elastic air bladders, games of hazard, catapults. Todos estos son inventos para los nenes de jardín, ¿no? Catapultas, ¿sí? Bueno, The comprised astronomical kaleidoscopes exhibiting the 12 constellations of the zodiac from Aries to Pisces, miniature mechanical orreries, arithmetical gelatin lozenges, geometrical to correspond with zoological biscuits, globe map playing balls, historically costumed dolls. What also stimulated him in his cogitations, his thoughts, the financial success achieved by, etc., etc. And now, why was he interested in these inventions? Because of the financial success of these other people, the people who really invented things. So he was interested in earning money too, no? Then, such as, and then in the next one, por ejemplo, ¿cuáles? K11, Keynote 11, Trousers, House of Keys, Alexander Keys. Again, I don't know if you remember this, Gabriela, but Alicia, I imagine you will remember. He was inventing an advertisement to because he was a kind of publicist, and one of his clients had an advertisement to publish in the newspaper, and the name of the man was the place, the shop was House of Keys, Alexander Keys, escrito como está ahí, Keyes. So he thought that it was going to be okay to use the symbol of the bank, ¿sí? Que tenía como, ¿sí? La casa de las llaves que era el símbolo del banco. That was an example of his creativeness, creativity, etc. Such as not, look at this long candle. Calculate when it burns out, and you receive gratis one pair of our special non-compo boots, etc. So, other inventions that were not so good were these ideas for advertisements. See? We look at them now and they are similar to what they do today. ¿No? Because they give you questions, o yo qué sé, si adivinas tal cosa, te ganás no sé qué. Well, so he's not so far away from the things that, that they really do, ¿no? Such as never. So, ¿qué sería lo que él nunca inventaría? Esto. ¿Se acuerdan que he already discussed the box, the tin of the potted meat? He didn't like it because it had the name of the meat was Plum Tree Spotted Meat. No, era la marca. And he criticized this in the previous chapter, saying that it is a wrong name because it is for meat, but the name is Plum Tree. ¿No? O sea, como árbol de ciruelo para el nombre de una carne. Y él criticaba eso. He says, incomplete, with it an abode of bliss, manufactured, and now he reads the tin. Why is this tin important? Because this is the tin that was left in the kitchen because Molly and Boylan ate this food. So he has the tin there. The name on the label is Plum Tree. A plum tree is a meat pot. Registered trademark. Beware of imitations. Pit Mod, Tramplit, Mount Pat, Plum True. So he criticizes the name of this product. ¿Sí? Llamar a una carne árbol de ciruela o ciruelo. No lo ve correcto. ¿Sí? But we have to remember that this tin is there, and this is a connection with Molly and Boylan, obviously. Which example did he adduce to induce Stephen to deduce that originality, though producing its own reward, does not invariably conduce to success? Originality does not conduce to success. His own ideated and rejected project of an illuminated show card, drawn by a beast of burden in which two smartly dressed girls were to be seated engaged in writing. What suggested scene was then constructed by Stephen? Solitary hotel in mountain pass. Autumn, twilight, firelit. In dark corner, young man seated. Young man enters. Young woman enters. Restless, solitary. She sits. She goes to the window. She stands. She sits. Twilight. She thinks. On solitary hotel, uh, paper she writes. She thinks. She writes. She sighs. Wheels and hoofs. She hurries out. He comes from his dark corner. He sees his solitary paper. He holds it towards fire. Twilight. He reads. Solitary. In sloping, upright, and backhands. Queen's Hotel, Queen's Hotel, Queen's Hotel, Queen's Hotel. Now, this scene that is presented here is, I mean, they didn't have television at that time, so they didn't have commercials. But this scene to advertise something is really a cinematic vision. It's like a scene in the cinema. See, the woman goes to the place, she sits, she thinks, she takes the paper, she no. This is the way they started doing the first animated pictures. See, with different drawings. You remember Walt Disney's pictures when they drew the I don't know, Mickey Mouse in a movement, another movement, and they all together. It seems as if the Mickey Mouse was moving. No, this is the idea here. He's using the technique of the cinema. What? In sloping, upright, and backhands, Queen's Hotel, Queen's Hotel. What suggested scene was then reconstructed by Bloom? The Queen's Hotel, Ennis, County Clare, where Rudolf Birak, died on the evening of the 27th June 1886. At some hour unstated, in consequence of an overdose of monkshood aconite, self-administered in the form of a neuralgic liniment composed of two parts of aconite liniment to one of chloroform liniment, purchased by him at 10:20 a.m. on the morning of the 27th June 1886 at the Medical Hall of Francis Dennehy, 17 Church Street, Ennis. This is very clearly the description, a very detailed description of how his father committed suicide. Because remember that for Bloom, the death of his father was very, um, let's say, was a kind of, was very problematic because the man killed himself. And he describes how he killed himself using this poison, mixing um, one part of chloroform with two parts of aconite. You remember that aconite was a kind of poison. Well, I sent you the picture. It was like little pills, no, that people used as a drug, but used in excess, of course, could lead to death. So he imagines how the father went in the morning, bought the products, no, and then at in the evening took an overdose of this chloroform plus aconite. Um, so after having, though not in consequence of having purchased at 3:15 p.m. on the afternoon of the 27th, 1886, a new boater straw hat, extra smart, after having, though not in consequence of having purchased at the hour, this is also very interesting. Look what the father did. The place aforesaid, the toxin aforesaid, at the General Drapery Store of James Cullen, 4 Main Street, Ennis. Did he attribute this homonymity to information or coincidence or intuition? Coincidence. Did he depict the scene verbally for his guest to see? He preferred himself to see another's face and listen to another's words, by which potential narration was realized and kinetic temperament relieved. Did he see only a second coincidence in the second scene narrated to him, described by the narrator as a pictured site of Palestine or the parable of the plums? A ver, he explains all the things that his father did before committing suicide. And what is completely unusual is that his father bought the poison, but he also bought a new hat, and then he killed himself. This question of buying a new hat and a smart hat, no, an expensive hat, before killing himself is something that requires an explanation. So there is for him only a coincidence, no? Bloom thinks that that is only a coincidence, but well, then uh, the second coincidence is that the one that he finds in the parable of the plums, la parábola de las ciruelas. It, with the preceding scene and with others unnarrated but existent by implication, to which add essays on various subjects or moral apothegms. Example, My Favorite Hero or Procrastination is the Thief of Time, composed during school years, seem to him to contain in itself and in conjunction with the personal equation certain possibilities of financial, social, personal, and sexual themes. And sexual success, sorry. Uh, he is comparing his description of his father's death with the things that he wrote when he was at school. And this, My Favorite Hero, was the composition that James Joyce wrote when he was at school. And his favorite hero was Odysseus. So look at all the coincidences here. What Joyce is trying to show us is that the world is full of coincidences. He was, for him, his favorite hero when he was a child at school was Odysseus, and now he's writing the novel Ulysses. And Bloom was interested in the same composition when he was a child, thinking that that could bring him possibilities of financial, social, personal, and sexual success, whether specially collected and selected as model pedagogic themes for the use of preparatory and junior grade students, or contributed in printed form, following the precedent of Philip Bufoy or Dr. Dick or Heblon's studies in blue, to a publication of certified circulation and solvency or employed verbally as intellectual stimulation for sympathetic auditors, tacitly appreciative of successful narrative and confidently augurative of successful achievement. He thinks that perhaps these things that he wrote could be used for students. They could be very didactic, no, and that may could give him money. Which domestic problem, as much as if not more than any other, frequently engage his minds? And look at the answer. What to do with our wives? That is the problem that makes him think what to do with our wives. So we remember that Molly is his wife, that Molly is his problem, and he doesn't know what to do. What had been his hypothetical singular solutions? This is what we are going to read is the solution for housewives. This is also rather misogynist. Parlor games. Yes, to give to give women juegos de mesa, que se entretengan con juegos de mesa las mujeres. Mm. Then embroidery. You understand embroidery, bordado, darning or knitting for the Polysiated Clothing Society. Musical duets, mandolin, guitar, piano. So a variety of entertainments. Commercial activity. Bueno, pero all the same, do you see Molly doing any of these things? This is ridiculous. Um, Then pleasingly obeyed mistress proprietress in a cool diary shop or warm cigar divan. The clandestine satisfaction of erotic irritation in masculine brothels. So, there is another possibility for women, eh? Okay. State inspected and medically controlled. Eso sí. Bloom is always claiming for a medical inspection of prostitutes, no? Social visits at regular infrequent prevented intervals and with regular frequented preventive superintendence. To and from female acquaintances of recognized respectability in the vicinity. So, women can visit each other, ¿no? Pueden ir a visitarse si son respetables, si son mujeres respetables. Courses of evening instruction, specially designed to render liberal instruction agreeable. So the women can play, can embroider, can, I don't know, can visit other women if they are respectable, and they can also take some courses, instruct themselves. What instances, what instances of deficient mental development in his wife inclined him in favor of the last mentioned ninth solution? Well, this is great because, in fact, he has noticed that Molly is not very intelligent, let's say. And so he thinks that it would be okay for Molly to do some courses, to study some courses. Uh, what will appear here again? The mistake that she made with metempsychosis. We all remember when they were reading. So, in these occupied moments, she had more than once covered a sheet of paper with signs and hieroglyphics, which she stated were Greek and Irish and Hebrew characters. Ella decía que estaba escribiendo en griego, eran nada. She had interrogated constantly at varying intervals as to the correct method of writing the capital initial of the name of a city in Canada, Quebec. No sabía la letra Q, la mayúscula. She understood little of political complications, internal or balance of power, external. In calculating the addenda of bills, she frequently had recourse to digital aid. You understand? Contar con los dedos. Tenía que contar con los dedos. After completion of laconic epistolary compositions, she abandoned the implement of calligraphy. In the encaustic pigment, exposed to the corrosive action of copperas, green vitriol, and natural. Unusual polysyllables of foreign origin she interpreted phonetically, or by false analogy, or by both. Metempsychosis, met him psychosis. Eso es lo que ella había dicho. Alias, a mendacious person mentioned in sacred scripture. Alias por Elías. Ella creía que Elías era alias. Bueno, no, no, es muy, o sea, por eso él creía que ella no era muy inteligente. What compensated in the false balance of her intelligence for these and such deficiencies of judgment regarding persons, places, and things? A ver, ¿qué compensaba? Poor Molly. The false apparent parallelism of all perpendicular arms of all balances, proved true by construction. The counterbalance of her proficiency of judgment regarding one person, proved true by experiment. So the only thing that produced certain equilibrium was how he had proficiency in judging one person, Bloom. She knew Bloom. How had he attempted to remedy this state of comparative ignorance? Él trató de variously by leaving in a conspicuous place a certain book open at a certain page. Es muy divertido. Le dejaba un librito abierto a ver si ella leía. By assuming in her, when alluding explanatorily, latent knowledge, by open ridicule in her presence of some absent other's ignorant lapse. So he mocked other person who made a mistake to see if she can understand the mistake. No? With what success had he attempted direct instruction? No. Direct instruction, no se animó. She followed not all. A part of the whole, gave attention with interest, comprehended with surprise, with care repeated, with greater difficulty remembered, forgot with ease, with misgiving re-remembered, re-repeated with error. So when he gave her direct instruction, she made mistakes. She couldn't repeat the instruction, no? Probably she didn't pay a lot of attention, no? I imagine. What system had proved more effective? Indirect suggestion implicating self-interest.